so basically, I think what I did was take a break from logos, from language, from being a writer. I had already found that, the market forces were trying to commercialize me. Like I had an agent at ICM. She wanted me to write, being a pregnant sex writer. It just felt like, and also it became the beginning of like the explosion of like memoirs by women, which is great. I'm glad they were writing them. I want them all to write and tell their stories.
Sure.
But I was not needed per se. And what I was needing was to kind of understand I put the mind that had been trained in a masculine way aside to make space, to open space for the embodied experience, which could not be put in words. So that's, stitching was like the one thing that I had seen my mom taught me, my grandma taught me, my aunt taught me. They would like do it on the porch, in the afternoons, and work would like stay in the trunks. The men never saw it. It was invisible. Like if the women decorated the house, no one paid attention to it except other women, but this was your dowry. So when you marry, that's what you take from home, is this chachkas, is this
Tablecloth,
embroideries.
napkins,
Right. Things that they make,
blankets.
bed covers,
Yeah.
all the doilies. And that's like, as a woman, your heritage.
I,
But
you know,
it's
I'm cracking
worthless
up.
in like the marketplace,
Yeah, yeah. I'm cracking up because I know how to do all those things.
You do?
Taught,
No
I
way.
was taught to sew, embroider, crochet, and knit
Wow.
by my grandmother,
Yeah.
by our housekeeper, and by my mother. My mother, I have in my home, I have embroidered tablecloths and napkins from my mother.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah.
you're just saying all this stuff, and you're like, I now make a line of clothing. This is part of it.
Wow.
I make it with a man from
Wow.
India. Like
Wow.
I design
Wow.
things with a man from India who lives in Australia, but we have everything made in India. So it's like, so
Yeah.
you're like, I don't have a parallel life to you, but I have enough of an overlap that it's
Yeah.
amazing that you were doing that for
Yeah.
art. I was
But I was,
embroidering when I was a hippie. I
yes.
was embroidering jeans. I was embroidering flowers on
Yeah.
one leg of the jeans and putting beads in,
Yeah.
little plastic beads into the center of all the flowers. Or I was embroidering people's jackets, their hippie jeans
Yeah.
jackets. So it's just
Yeah.
amazing what you're saying. But all the
The,
time you're thinking politics, and all the
the
time
whole time I'm like digesting what I'm learning from the practice, and that's why, and I often speak about this. It takes time, change, coming up with a quick idea and, hearing to like call it something and put it out there and, trademark it and monetize it, sure. But the value is something that has taken a lot of time, value is time, it's not money, and it takes a lot of time to understand something that's so fundamental. So what a simple thing that I understood, I mean, I was teaching a lot of, all of my work is women's bodies, and I stitched stuff about 9/11. I did a lot of political work during Abu Ghraib and all. um, and I stitched on plexi and metal and wood and charcoal pieces, and uh, and that practice, the repetition of that, kind of like slowed down the expectations of society of me, and that, as well as like the back and forth with teaching my daughter who to be in the world, kind of clarified for me the inevitable dichotomy, split that I had lived in my whole like liberated feminist life, which was, for example, in one way, my mind was male and my body was female. So like I used my body to get off. I kind of like pimped off my body sexually because I didn't think of it as I was here, and then I had this stuff that,
I
I was,
get it.
using. And, you know,
That's so good.
trying to teach her how to be in the world. You know, I ended up using like two languages always at the same time. I would be, and I had also two identities. You know, I was like Eve in the school and Eurydice in the studio, you know, and I signed my books as Eurydice. So the mothers at the school didn't really know what I do. And my daughter understood, you know, so I explained to her, we live in a patriarchy, you know, we don't believe in it. So I'm going to teach you two things about everything. I will teach you my truth, and I will teach you what the world does so you can fit in and you can speak that and you can perform that. But at the same time, I will tell you what's really happening. And it was almost like, you know, this. So the way of having to explain the most basic things to her, you know, was so useful for me, because it helped me get back to like the most basic things of life as she was growing up, you know, and how to give her agency, you know, and choice, rather than like right and wrong from the beginning, you know, from the get-go. So I think that, you know, it was a great lesson in how the feminine or the female, you know, differs, what our, you know, what our strength is, and how to bring together the two, which, you know, like I knew the split when I was 21 and I wrote about the vagina being cut off. I knew that, right? But how to reconnect in a way that was that used the only language we have, which is the language of the patriarchy, and yet could shift the culture, was what I was, you know, trying to do. And I feel that I'm in a good place right now, and COVID has been, in a sense, useful, very, very revelatory, because a lot of these things have become so much more obvious, you know, where our activities are restricted, so we see things more clearly because we pay more attention.
We have to. We have to. I have questions for you about your daughter. What is she? She's in college now?
Yeah, she's
And what
studying
is
human
she?
rights.
Human rights she's studying.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. I could see how
She's
that.
getting, she went to the only school that has a human rights degree at the Hannah Arendt Center. And she wants to be a human rights lawyer. So we'll see.
I can see how that is a direct outcome of
Yeah.
like you putting the split back together and her saying, okay,
Right.
how can I make a difference in this crazy world?
I know. Yeah.
So amazing. What a
Yeah.
wonderful, I didn't know what to expect when I asked you that. So so now I'm going to ask you some practical questions. Like a woman listening to this show, you know, one of my listeners who's my loyal listener listening to this show, who's hearing maybe for the first time, wow, you woman could be living in your mind, not embodied. What I have a few questions like this. You're living in your mind, you're not embodied. Maybe you're married and you've been doing this thing like Eve would have done if she was stayed in Greece. Like she
Yeah.
would have been, her mother married her off to some man, which your mother didn't. You didn't give her the chance.
No.
What should she do if this is the first spark of this kind of thinking?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm living in my head doing what the patriarchy has told me, even what my mother's told me, because she's living in the patriarchy. What should I do if I want to have agency or I want to have sovereignty? What's the first thing I should think about or do or check out? What should I read? What should I listen to? What should I take on?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not, you know, I try to not, you know, monetize my work because I want it to be from the heart. I do have the podcast, Speak Sex with Eve, and it's everywhere. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on, you know, it's free. It will always be free. It doesn't have commercials. It's, you know, 100% from the heart, and it talks about this stuff, and it's an introduction for sure. I have a YouTube channel, Speak Sex with Eve. Um, I am working, I'm pretty much done with these books and that I have been working on, which is the Speak Sex book. And by speaking sex, it's not how to have sex. It's how to speak in a way, in whatever language you use every day, but with a different valuation, with a different emphasis. So you're conscious of what you say and you consciously say them in a different way. Instead of going like the way that we've been taught.
Like instead of being a good little girl.
Right. Instead of just doing what you're told. Yeah. And, becoming conscious of our bondage, I think is very important, and becoming conscious of our foremothers, this is not, it's a really, the weight of the millions of women we're talking about is awesome. It's not just you, with your like rights and your vote and your wine and your lunches and your girlfriends and your shopping online. It's not just you, it is your kids, but it's also all those people who came behind you, before you, who were like kept in. So it's just such an extreme kind of like imprisonment of the female. And I believe that it stems from the womb, it stems from motherhood, it stems from the ability of the female to create life. So it's what the patriarchy is particularly interested in is the product of the womb. Woman had the power to reproduce. So yes, the man is the inseminator, but the woman like puts the work, gives it 9 months of her life and gives it her body and 2 years of whatever, or nursing, and then also her heart, because the mother becomes more powerful than the self. So and that's the selflessness that the patriarchy takes advantage of to kind of get us to go along for the sake of our children, for the sake of. So the first thing to do is become conscious. And the second thing to do is become conscious by thinking about it, exposing yourself. And the second thing to do is to let go of fear, because going into the unknown is so much more rewarding, and you will be taken care of. You will be taken care of. You have to believe that you will be taken care of. So you don't need to depend on the men. You are such an example.
You are speaking you're preaching to my choir.
Perfect.
You're speaking to my heart. Now I have an opposite question for you. I mean, it's going to be crazy, topsy-turvy, but I'm doing it because you're so articulate about this in a way that it's like you've thought out both sides in a way that I haven't experienced anybody else coming from both sides. So now my other question, which may seem crazy after the question I just asked you, is, if you're an angry Me Too feminist, if you're listening to this, because I have some listeners like that too. If you're so angry and you're so mad at men and you're so mad at the patriarchy, and you're listening to this, you're listening to Eve, and but you're so like unsettled inside. Like nothing is feeling good to you. You just want to cut off balls, but you don't, it's not coming to anything. Like it's not leading to anything productive unless unless you're writing a book about it. But something like you're so unsettled because of the effects of the patriarchy. How can you come back to inner peace? How can you let go of hatred, let go of torment and anger, and come to peace? Because the other half of the planet is people in male bodies who, many of them are